Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome, wherever you are in the world, whichever part of the world you're in. Welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations about Network Marketing. I'm BK, and as usual, on the other end, we have Dr. Wayne. Hi, Dr. Wayne.
Hi, BK. Hi, everyone.
I see that you have an upgrade as well.
Yes, I certainly do. You like this thing in front of me? So, yes. Hopefully this will improve the quality of our sound. And I think as we've mentioned all the way through, BK, it's that's what Candid Conversations is about. We find little things that need improvement. So then we say, yes, this is what we're going to do. And then with time, we do it.
Yeah. And this is one of the, I think it's also a interesting learning point for us as well, right? As we spend a lot of time talking about this, and then finally there was a point in time that we decided enough is enough. Let's just get going, and progression is perfection. I love that line, right?
Yes, very true, very true.
Yeah, which brings us to the topic for today, time, right? Time. I think we have kind of touched on time last week. We talked about a certain movie that was very interesting, that was about a father and son connected over time and space through this radio, ham radio, right?
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about time as well. And I just take a glance at Dr. Wayne's show notes. And by the way, we do have show notes now for all the shows. Dr. Wayne has very kindly produced the show notes. So if you do want the show notes as you listen to us, do check us out at networkmarketerpodcast.com, and you just request for the show notes. But I'm just glancing at the show notes now, and I can see that we are learning how to collapse time, right? Wow, that's a fascinating topic.
Yes, it is. How to collapse time to achieve. That's the major topic for today. So how to collapse time to achieve your goals, your why, even looking at passive income. And then for those who want to go further, even to look at improving your legacy income. So how to collapse time to achieve your why, your goals, passive and legacy income. And before we move on to that, I just wanted to, as BK mentioned, last podcast, we talked about the concept around understanding frequencies and vibrations and how it can propel your success. And the major theme there we looked into is the law of vibration. And this is, and we mentioned that this is the third of the 7 universal laws, and it is an immutable law. So remembering immutable means that it cannot be changed. We work with it, that's for sure. And what the law of vibration means, that nothing rests, everything moves, and everything vibrates. And the whole universe actually vibrates, and we vibrate, the earth vibrates. And science has confirmed that everything in the universe, including you, is pure energy vibrating at different frequencies. Remembering in other podcasts, we talked about different organs have different frequencies, different tissues have different frequencies. Health, we should be resonating between 62 and 72 megahertz. So we're vibrating with different frequencies all the time. And we looked at the importance of love and gratitude, for example, has a frequency of around about 500 hertz, whereas the negative emotions and fear in that can have a frequency of around about 50 hertz. So we want to do more to aspire to look at more of the gratitude and unconditional love and giving and tithing, etc. So these are all the different things we went through last time. And I love this quote by Nikola Tesla. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's what we're doing here, BK. We're finding the secrets of the universe, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and just for the listeners and people who are watching the videos, right? A lot of times when we encounter a very new topic, our brain kind of sometimes might be a bit more, okay, this is very new to me. I'm a bit frightened. I'm not really sure what it is. But the simplest way to think of this, I always try to find things to help myself to take a topic and then understand it from a simpler perspective. That's what I like to do for myself, right? And like what the things that Dr. Wayne talked about just now, frequency and vibration and all that, sometimes when we think about it, we think it's something too far out or too complex for us. But actually it's not. I mean, like just now at the start of the show, we played a short little piece of music, right? And if you think about when you hear a certain song or a certain type of song, right? Some songs will get you moving. Some songs are a little bit more sentimental, puts you in a sadder mood, right? That is exactly what we're talking about here. It is the fact that the song is in a certain frequency and a certain vibration, and it will actually evoke certain kinds of emotions in you, right? Some that gets you moving, some that gets your blood pumping, some that gets you feeling a little bit down sometimes, and you wonder why, right? That is exactly what is happening and what we're talking about today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty, it's pretty incredible. And last time we then talked about the 9 ways to raise your vibration. So if you do want to find out the 9 ways to raise your vibration, please go back into our archives and listen to last week's podcast, and that's where we go through that in greater detail. So today, as said, we're looking at how to look at your why and your goals and how to collapse time. Interestingly, one of the ancient medicine philosophies is that health, wealth, whether you're looking at relationships and abundance, will not enter if the body is impure. And through other podcasts, we've talked about this concept as well. And I want you to think of your body as the antenna, and it needs to be pure or healthy. And this is what the ancients are basically meaning. So I'll just say it again. Health, wealth, having great relationships and abundance will not enter if the body is impure. So think of a radio, think of even a TV that's receiving this data from a transmitter, and then it's putting it into pictures in front of you or putting it into words if you're listening to a radio or a song. If that, we'll talk about the radio first, if it has got things inside of it that's not working properly, then unfortunately you're going to end up with something that is distorted. And even if it's not on the right frequency, etc., it's going to be distorted. But what I really want to hone in here is not in terms of the frequency that's being transmitted. We've talked about that many times before. This is looking at the actual radio itself, the physical matter of the radio. If we've got things in there not working, the radio can't do its job. And it's the same with the physical body. The physical body, think of the physical body as this piece of matter that is the antenna receiving. It's a transmitter and a transducer as well. So then we go to the TV. If the TV has parts in there that's not working, then unfortunately you're going to get distortions visually as well. So this is what they mean. This is what the ancients mean: is health, wealth, and having great relationships and abundance will not enter if the body's impure. And I just want to go deeper into this, and just for an understanding. And now what they're finding in Western medicine, ancient medicine, I'll go first, talk about it in ancient medicine. Ancient medicine is, if we go to the traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about it in terms of qi. In Ayurvedic medicine, they talk about it in terms of prana. And all the ancients basically have different words for these different words to basically signal or to let us know that something's happening internally, meaning energy is moving. Like think of qi as the traditional Chinese medicine's word to describe that the energy that is within us. And if the qi gets blocked, it can create diseases. If qi gets damp, and so all these different words then actually relate to different ways qi can then end up with imbalances in our body. Prana is the same. And the thing that's really interesting here, we can then even think in ancient medicine in terms of, you've heard of people saying or even hu. There's all these different words that will then actually bring about a language that we can then understand from the ancients. And we have heard these words before. So think of that's the way ancient medicine describes how energy is transmuted, transformed, moves through the body. Okay. Now, in Western medicine, they call these molecules signaling molecules. And think of this as the language of the cell. And for those who may not know, we have something like 50 trillion human DNA cells in our body. And Western medicine suggests that about 300 billion cells die to be reborn every single day. So now this is what's called an inflammatory oxidative process. And we often think of inflammation and oxidation as a negative, and it's not. We actually need chronic inflammation and oxidation to allow us to live. So those 300 billion cells that die every day, they need some sort of signaling molecules to tell them what to do. Even stem cells need some sort of signaling molecule to tell them what to do. So think of this in ancient medicine as chi or prana. We can use those words as well. Western medicine, we use signaling molecules. And these signaling molecules have a vibration. They have a frequency, exactly what we were talking about before. And when we have good inflammation, good oxidation, this is the 50-year-old who's got the body of a 30-year-old who is functioning exceptionally well. Their frequency is between that 62 and 72 hertz megahertz, for example, and they're really feeling fantastic. Their vehicle is clean. Now, what happens now, unfortunately, due to what we eat and drink and stress and electromagnetic stresses and chemicals and hidden infections like bacteria and viruses, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in detail shortly, what happens is an imbalance occurs. So say one of these cells, these 300 billion cells that's dying every day, has now been, unfortunately, I'll use the word attacked, but it's changed its genetic expression. So now it has a different frequency, a different vibration. And rather than being like a nice round cell, think of it now like a spiky ball. And this spiky ball now can then go and create havoc in different areas of the body. Now, the problem is when this occurs, it actually then sets up an imbalance in the body, and we end up with more acidity through the body. Now, the interesting thing is when this acidity rages through the body, and think of it like acidity is like the wind speed that will drive a fire. So think of the wind speed at, say, 160 kilometers an hour or 100 miles an hour. And you got the fire. Now, if you've got a 100 mile an hour fire, 160 kilometer an hour fire, you can't put out that fire. So bringing this back to the human body, chronic inflammation and oxidative stress is the fire. The pH variation when it becomes acidic is the wind speed. And when I'm looking at people's bloods and when I'm looking at different things, I can actually tell that they've got something like 160 kilometer an hour wind driving the fire. What happens is the body now wants to put the fire out. That's its job. And it wants to decrease the wind speed. And the way it decreases the wind speed is try to alkalize the body. And the major nutrient that is an alkalizer that's really accessible in the body is calcium. So what it does now is calcium now floods through the body. Remember, it's got a vibration of frequency. It'll flood through the body. And they say, I've never heard it, but I've spoken to researchers and scientists. There's calcium channels, and they actually have a song. When you're listening to these things, they have their own unique song. They have music, which is just incredible. And these calcium channels, what happens is when they flood the body and the body's got this negative calcium, so not the calcium channels, but when it's got this negative calcium, it floods through the body. And initially what you notice is you're just a little bit stiffer. You just can't move as freely. If this calcium keeps on going through the body, then it goes to the joints. Firstly muscles, then joints. Then after that, you can notice people start noticing cold hands and feet, spider veins, varicose veins. They can even notice high blood pressure, etc. But the major thing I want to get to now is this calcium now goes to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland starts to be coated with this calcium salts. And I want you just to bring in an analogy so that you can comprehend what I'm suggesting here, is I want you to think of a light bulb. Okay, so think of a light bulb illuminating a room. Your pineal gland illuminates you. It's one of your intuitive, some will say your intuitive center. So you've got this light bulb that is illuminating the room, but for some reason, we're going to now slowly paint it black, just from the bottom, and we're just going to paint it black a little bit, and we're going to keep on circling and circling and circling until that whole light bulb is coated black. And literally now, the room is not illuminated. And same thing happens to the pineal gland with calcium salts. It starts to be coated initially, and what happens now is stress can be affected. Stress affects us more. Intuition becomes dulled. We start making the wrong choices. Things become a problem. And then if it totally coats it, then what happens is now we're just working from ego. We're just an ego maniac, so to speak, and can't talk to this person because it's all about them, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you know some of these people. So this is what the ancients, this is just a little bit, we've got more to talk about, BK, but it's just interesting that just from that understanding, that from the ancient medicine perspective, that the light of wealth, the light of health, the light of abundance, the light of having a great relationships, etc., will not occur if the body is impure. And this is what the ancients meant when we look at it from a Western medicine perspective. Pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is fascinating. And then some of the things that Dr. Wayne always shares with us, and I'm always learning from him. I always tell him that I feel like a perpetual student, which is fine. I'm happy with that. But I just want to clarify something with Dr. Wayne as to what he just said. So when you say that the light of the universe cannot enter a body, right? Is it more like it will still come in a little bit, but may not be in like very clear reception?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So for example, like, the best analogy I can think of is, I'm not sure some of you who are listening might be too young to even know about something like this, but in the past, when we had TV sets, we used to have this antennas on top of the TV.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to get a clear reception, we kind of have to adjust the angle of the antennas, and then, at a certain position, the picture becomes super clear. But before that, you can see the picture is just a bit fuzzy, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, when your body is not in a perfectly pure state, you can still get a bit of otherwise we won't be able to survive in this world, I'm guessing, right? We still have a bit of the things that we need, but it's not the full potential. It's not the full clarity of the image or what the universe can give to you, right?
And it becomes really...
Sorry. And also the other thing I noticed is that those of us who have been through that era where you have to adjust the antennas to get a clear picture, sometimes our parents or our friends will say, can you stay there, hold that antenna? Because when you are holding it, the picture is super clear. Right? Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that we actually are channeling the signals. Yeah. Right? When our human body is touching the antenna, sometimes the picture becomes even clearer, right? And sometimes your friends will tell, hey, stay there, don't move. You are perfect, right? And they are able to watch the game or the sports game, or they are able to watch the movie because you were holding it in place. And that's fascinating because it is a very visual and a real world example to tell us that we are channeling, frequencies that we cannot see into our own body sometimes.
Yes. And that's what I meant by the analogy with regards to the light bulb. Say it's only coated a little bit at the bottom. So your pineal gland's only coated a little bit at the bottom. Therefore, you're still receiving information, etc. But the more it gets coated, the more it gets less and less. So yeah, you're very, very true, BK. We all have the ability, though, which is fantastic, because of ancient medicine's philosophies and their understanding. All disease and all disharmony is the mistake of the intellect. And we've spoken about this many times, meaning the mistake is a great word. Mistake means that we can actually turn that around, which is fantastic. So hopefully that's another way of understanding this really important quote from ancient medicine. And just to bring this home a little bit more in terms of our DNA now, in terms of these signaling molecules. So your DNA changes shape 3 million times per second. And for every gene blueprint in your body, you can make over 3,000 different versions of a protein from the same blueprint based on the way someone responds to life. So, the importance of this is that, is that when you have happy thoughts and when you have thoughts that are literally like gratitude and of love and unconditional love, etc. All the happy hormones are then made, like serotonin, etc. And therefore, genes will express themselves positively, and health, therefore, is abundantly around you. And remember, the major reason we want great health is because when we've got great health, and we'll get to it shortly, we can then actually, the light of the universe will come in, but also we can then go out and go into the information fields, which we've talked about before, and get information that we've never had before, bring it back, and then we're able to use that information to improve our health, our wealth, and relationships, etc. However, if we have stressful thoughts, if we have thoughts that are harming, and a lot of the times, unfortunately, I'm going to make the Pareto's law here, an 80-20 representation. 80% of our thoughts, unfortunately, for a lot of people are negative, and we don't even know that they're negative. And when these negative thoughts are being thrusted out into the universe, less serotonin is made, and your genes will possibly express themselves more negatively, creating ill health, and therefore the vessel now becomes impure. The vessel now becomes hardened with this calcium, muscles become hardened, arteries become hardened, and we talked about the pineal gland becomes hardened with these calcium things as well. And every day, our cells are making trillions of new mutations genetically. And we need to make sure that these new mutations are going in the right way. Otherwise, these new mutations will be vibrating at a lesser frequency. And we know now that if the frequency gets below 40, it's now cancer and really serious disease. We want our frequencies to be between 62 and 72 megahertz. By choosing just how we think, we can really create an abundant health and wealth and relationship as well. And interestingly, with your DNA, it can stretch from the earth and to the sun and back up to 600 times. Imagine that. The DNA that's in your body can stretch from the earth to the sun and back 600 times, which is pretty incredible. Now, remembering before, I talked about the body having 50 trillion cells. And science is now saying that we're born with, and we still have within us, up to 380 trillion viruses that live within us. And then science says that we have about 38 trillion bacteria that live inside our body, and we can have another, somewhere between another 30 to, say about 30 trillion that actually live outside of us as well. And then think of the yeast and the mold, think of even parasites and worms and different things that are living within us. And when you look at that, we're a very symbiotic organism. And when all these are balanced and we have homeostasis and they're talking to each other, we're in the right frequency, we have these signaling molecules doing the right thing, we have great health. Unfortunately, say now the frequency, because we're resonating all the time with these negative frequencies around about 50, rather than the 500 hertz, what happens is the 50 hertz, say there's a net loss of 450. If we take 50 away from a good thought of 500, we've got a loss of 450 every time we think. That's why eventually you can be in health between 62 and 72, or you might be, for example, sitting on 43 megahertz. You're not well, but you're able to do everything. And then one day, unfortunately, drops down to 40, and then unfortunately a terrible diagnosis is given. But the main thing I want why I went here is because these viruses and bacteria, when you're actually at your 62 to 72 megahertz, these viruses and bacteria and yeast and fungi and all the rest of it and parasites, they then are in creating great health for you. They're actually working for you to actually give you great health. But when the frequencies drop, other types of negative viruses and other things, bacteria, can now actually grow, which now allows the body to be impure at a totally different level. And Western medicine is kind of now starting to agree with ancient medicine. Ancient medicine has mentioned that most diseases, all diseases, is the end result of these bacteria and viruses going wrong in our body. Stealth infections is something I call them, or hidden infections. And Western medicine is now starting to understand this because they have the technology to prove that. They're finding that a lot of viruses are drive cancer, for example. And they'll find more and more about this. In 2004, I think it was 2004, Time magazine article that read, you can catch heart disease, meaning it's a virus or bacteria. So they're starting to learn more about this. So this is why it's really important to understand the vessel, this antenna is really important to be clean, okay? Really important to be clean. So when the frequencies start to drop and it's more in an oxidative stress side of things, this is when we can end up with hypertension, heart disease, Alzheimer, macular degeneration, osteoarthritis, stroke, overweight, obesity, and diabetes. If it's more an inflammatory side, it's more asthma and allergies and bowel issues, like irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, thyroid, hormone imbalances, autoimmune, like rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, lupus, etc., cancer, and skin issues. So what happens is these diseases or disharmony is now because our frequency and vibration has dropped down from 62 now down towards more of the 40. The cancer, of course, is below the 40. Once again, the body is impure. When the body is impure, we can't receive the light of the universe to then actually heal. We can't receive the light of the universe to be able to do the things we want to be able to do. So, before I go on there, I know there's a lot I've said there, BK. Anything you want to add there, mate?
Yeah, just thinking about when Dr. Wayne was sharing just now, sometimes in our pill popping and our modern medical age, we kind of it is funny, right? Because we have this term called the placebo effect, which sometimes is kind of thought of as being a bad thing, but actually it's a great thing. It's showing us that you can affect your wellness, your health, by the way you think, right? You know, the sheer fact that scientists, when they are doing a clinical trial, they try to eliminate this thing called the placebo effect. Because sometimes when you tell a person this is good for you and it literally becomes good for them, it actually shows us that our human mind is capable of affecting our health, right? And that is actually, to me, a fascinating thing. We should welcome the placebo effect and not push it away and say that, hey, we want to eliminate the placebo effect. I would gladly take anything that can give me a placebo effect if that's the case, right, Dr. Wayne?
Yes. Yeah, the placebo effect is just incredible when you understand it, especially in the light of it being positive, as you mentioned there, BK. And just even going further than that, like multiple personality disorder with people. So think of someone with 5 different personalities. And person A comes in, remembering all this is happening due to thought, okay? And we're going to get into this in terms of collapsing time, etc. But just to bring this home a little bit more, so think of person A. Person A has got say a scar on the right-hand side of their cheek, and person A has got blue eyes. And now what will happen is person B will come in with a totally different personality and now with a totally different look. This person will now have brown eyes and no scar. And this will happen in seconds. In seconds. How does that happen? How does that happen? Isn't it fascinating? And we've got that. And as you said with the placebo, leading in with the placebo effect, we've got our own pharmacy internally. We've got all the drugs we need internally once we can tap into it. So if we look at the way most people think, and that's where I want to go now, if we look at the way most people think, and I've suggested the importance of looking after your vessel. So if you are someone who may, and you know what is right or wrong, like if you know you're drinking too much alcohol, if you know you're eating too much of the foods that might be, not so good for us, etc. If you're doing activities that aren't so good for us, just pull back on those things because the body needs to be pure, okay? And try to look at how you can improve your body, that's for sure. So think of the body, if it's ill or if it's breaking down but you don't know it, We've talked about the concept of the hoarder before. So think of the mind now takes in all these different memories and it hoards them in the amygdala and other parts of the brain. And what happens is the human body being the antenna, and if we're not mindful, if we're in the past, it'll bring about depression, and if we're in the future, it'll bring about anxiety. If we're in both, it'll then bring about anger, frustration, lack of motivation. And remember, the liver is the organ that then disperses. It's the general, and then disperses these emotions into different parts of the body. Then can affect different parts of the body. So this person who's in the future, in the past, or is angry and frustrated because they're in both, they're rarely in the now. And this is how we extend time. This is how goals will take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Even a lot of the times they will not even be achieved, unfortunately, because our mind is purely elsewhere. It's never in the now. And we talked, I think, in great detail a couple of sessions ago about this as well. So if we want to collapse time, we want the human body to be pure, okay? And we want to then look at ways of helping the body to detoxify, to have healthy organic foods, to make sure your water is purified, make sure you're doing an adequate exercise 3 times at least a week, no more than 30 minutes a day. We're looking at, if you can, meditating every day. I'd say that would be a must. And if you can, meditate while you're watching the sun come up initially and then close your eyes after that. Brilliant way of starting your day. And what happens now is, think of us as the antenna, and now we've got this healthy being, this healthy vessel, and now we're the transmitter. So think of thought. So now we're thinking of our goal. And we're thinking of thought, we're thinking of our goal, we're thinking of our why, we're thinking of how to create passive income and legacy income, and we're thinking that in our mind. Think of that as we're sending out a frequency. We're sending out a frequency and it's going out, it's going out, it's going out. However, the thing that brings that reality back into us is our emotion. So the emotion brings it back. So if we just think of XYZ, your why, your goal, whatever it might be, but if that's not attached to an emotion, it basically stays out in the ethos and just basically floats around out there because there's nothing bringing it back. There's no message, and the body wants to be a transducer, but now it can't. It's only transmitting. So, and if we look at statistics, BK, I think it's something like, 90% of people, or 80 to 90% of people don't even do goal setting. They don't even write them down. They don't even do the first step. And the second step then is being the transmitter, meaning put your goal into a thought, like an image that you can see it happening. And then what we've got to do then is put it into a frequency. And this is literally how we can then collapse time. So anything on that one, BK, before we move to the next bit?
I think while Dr. Wayne was talking about this, something reminded me about something I was reading about the other day. When we kind of think about all these things about time and the past and the present and compressing time, it again may be a complex topic. I've always enjoyed time travel movies, but it always takes your brain on a spin, right? It's like, okay, what just happened kind of idea, right? But if you think back in your life, I'm pretty sure a lot of times we say to ourselves, or we say to our friends, right? Today feels like a Sunday, right? We say something like that, right? Today feels like a Sunday. So it actually means that we are able to transport ourselves to a different time, or we are able to place ourselves in different times, because we kind of know how Sunday feels like. We kind of know how Wednesdays feels like, and so on, right? We are able to move ourselves in time, right? And like what Dr. Wayne was sharing just now, when we dwell too much in the past, right, we are setting ourselves up for depression. And when we dwell too much in the future, we set ourselves up for anxiety because things that are not happening or we just imagine they are. But if we are able to do the same thing that we do when we say, hey, today feels like a Sunday, and bring ourselves back to the now, and that is what Dr. Wayne is saying, that that's the fastest way to compress time, to collapse time, and then we can achieve what we want to achieve in a much faster manner.
Yes, yes. And just to give some examples of this, there was a guy who came to see me. He was an athlete, a golfer, and he wanted to become the amateur number one in Australia. And he gave himself about 18 months to 2 years to achieve his goal. And this particular gentleman as well, he's got a very natural talent, but still, even with that natural talent, he wasn't that well known in the golfing world back in those days. And when he came to see me, I taught him all these principles. We set goals. I got him to visualize his goals in the now with, that's the thought going out, and then with emotion. And he became number one golfer in Australia in 6 months, amateur golfer in 6 months of doing all that, which was absolutely incredible. And then from there, I've had other people who will say, you know, I want to build blah, blah, blah. I want to build this, this new home, for example, but I haven't got the money. And then they'll do all this, and don't worry about the why. The universe is not interested in the how. Don't worry about the how. The universe is not interested in the how. If you start looking at that, things never will come to you. If you just put it out there in the way we're talking about it. And interestingly, going back to this person, wanted to build this house, and then something happened, I won't go into it exactly, whereby that person was given about $180,000 to $200,000 check. And I've seen other things whereby, you know, someone started from nothing, and by doing these practices, with time, they're then able, within a couple of years, basically now have generational wealth. So I know, as BK has mentioned, and I think we've said it before many times as well, they might sound like out there concepts, but when you trust the process, this is a system. Remember, everything we're talking about in universal laws, there's immutable laws. If we work with them, it's marvelous what can be achieved. And the main theme here, to collapse time, to achieve your why, to achieve your goals, and to achieve your passive and legacy income faster than what you possibly ever may have thought of. The concept here is to be in the now. You're the antenna. The purer you are in body, what happens then is now you're able to visualize your goal being the transmitter, sending out a frequency. The emotion now actually brings it back as a reality. So, and then what happens is our goals then collapse. Sorry, time is then collapsed to achieve our goals, etc. So it's incredible. I've seen so many cases now where this has actually happened, even with health. I remember one particular gentleman, and this particular gentleman, he was about 70. He didn't want to know anything about diet. He was a smoker. He ate red meat. Unfortunately, he was terminal when I saw him with some type of, this was going back about 25 years ago. We touched on this. I went through this, and I knew he wouldn't do it. But what I did is I basically just chatted to him with regards to trying to stay in the now. And we just talked about that for a little bit. And next time he came in 2 weeks' time, everything was clear. Everything was clear. Everything was gone. And he didn't take any vitamin. He didn't take anything at all. And he didn't do anything I suggested, other than when we had this conversation, something touched him whereby he sent out a message. And the message might have been, hey, I want to be cancer-free. And then what happens then is he then brought back that emotion because he wanted to be with his family. And then bang, it transformed his life. So anything can happen. And please, don't disregard this. It's really important. This is universal laws. They're there for us to help us to achieve our goals.
I mean, even today, science is telling us that nothing is new in the universe.
No.
Everything
no.
that we have now has already been created. So everything
Yes.
you see around you now has been around since the beginning of time, and obviously till the end of time, if that even happens, right? It's just that energy, for example, will never be destroyed. It just changes from one form to another. And we have seen in the real world, our physical world, how that can happen, right? And it's the same thing that we're talking about now. I mean, in the past, all these principles that Dr. Wayne is sharing with us, they were practiced by very, very old civilizations, and they have seen results. And obviously, they have been passed down the ages to us. And it's just that sometimes we can't quantify certain things, but today we actually can, right? Science is showing us certain things that we are now understanding better from the ancient perspective, and when you marry it with modern technology. Even some of the things that Dr. Wayne talked about just now about the genes and stuff, I mean, in the past, we wouldn't even be able to visualize or even think about it, but yet science is making it possible. I mean, I read a report recently that we can actually put nano-size measuring instruments onto the genes such that it tells you what is going on in the genes, right? I mean, how do the scientists today know when a gene is better expressed or not better expressed? It's because they were able to put a measuring device that is so small onto the genes that tells you what's happening on the genes, right? Now, it wouldn't have been possible. It was unthinkable, maybe 20 years ago or 50 years ago, but this is what's happening now, right?
Yes.
But most interestingly, the things that Dr. Wayne is sharing with us today is that it's not changed. It's been around for ages, and science today is just showing us that, or helping us to quantify it, or helping us to visualize something very new. So I think that's a nice wrap up for us today. Once again, thank you, Dr. Wayne, for sharing such wonderful information with us. I'm learning everything new all the time, right? So once again, remember that we do have show notes. If you want the show notes as you listen to us, just hit us up at networkmarketerpodcast.com. If you're watching the video, I'll put up the link here. It's at networkmarketerpodcast.com. Our archive episodes are also there. And of course, some of you may be thinking, well, these are subjects or subject matter that I would like to dive deeper into. We also have a program for that. We have done a very extensive program on the 5 hidden reasons why most network marketers fail and why you don't have to. And that you can find us at 5hiddenreasons.com. So that's a numerical number 5. So 5hiddenreasons.com. So thank you, Dr. Wayne. I'll see you again next week. And I'm just going to take us out with a bit of music.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, BK.